Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. A gray sky hung low over New York City, the streets glistening with rain. Lila Brooks hurried along the sidewalk, her second-hand coat soaked through the cold, biting her hands. Inside her worn backpack was a hospital invoice, thousands of dollars her mother owed after another round of treatment. Lila's breath clouded in the air as she whispered to herself, just a little longer, Mom. I will figure something out. That was when her phone buzzed. The number was unknown. Miss Brooks, a male voice said, deep and controlled. This is Adrian Hale. We need to talk. She froze. Adrian Hale, the ruthless real estate tycoon whose face filled every finance magazine, the man no one dared to say no to. I think you have the wrong number, she stammered. I do not, he replied. Your mother's hospital bill has been forwarded to my company's charity office. Meet me at Hale Tower 7:00 p.m. sharp. Do not be late. The line went dead. By 7 o'clock, Lila was standing in the marble lobby of Hale Tower, water dripping from her coat onto the polished floor. The receptionist guided her to the top floor, where city lights stretched endlessly beyond glass walls. Adrian Hale stood by the window, tall, sharply dressed, a man carved from calm precision. You must be wondering why you are here, he said without turning around. Yes, sir, she murmured, a voice trembling. He finally faced her. His eyes were cold, the kind of blue that made people shrink. I have a proposition. You will marry me. The world seemed to tilt. Excuse me, it is a contract marriage. 7 days. You will attend events as my wife to stabilize the board's confidence. In return, I will clear your mother's hospital debt. Lila's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Why me? Because you have nothing to lose, he said simply. And I have no time for games. Silence filled the office, broken only by the rain against the windows. She wanted to refuse to run, to scream that it was insane, but her mother's face flashed before her eyes, pale and fragile. Her voice came out barely a whisper. If I agree. What are the rules? Adrian opened a folder and slid a paper across the desk. No questions, no intimacy, no love. After 7 days, we annul the marriage and you walk away debt-free. Lila's hand trembled as she picked up the pen. The contract blurred through her tears. When she finally signed her name, Adrian's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Good, he said. Our wedding is tomorrow morning. The next day, flashes from cameras lit the marble hall of the hotel ballroom. The air smelled of lilies and cold champagne. Lila stood beside him in a white gown that was not hers, smiling for strangers, while her heart ached beneath layers of silk. Smile, Adrian murmured under his breath. It is just for 7 days. She did. But as their hands brushed for the first time, something unexplainable flickered between them. Something neither contract nor logic could contain. The rain had not stopped since the wedding. For the city, it was just another autumn storm. For Lila, it felt like the world was washing away what little she had left of herself. She sat by the window of the penthouse, watching drops crawl down the glass. The apartment was enormous, too quiet, too clean. Every piece of furniture looked like it had been chosen for perfection, not comfort. She almost laughed at the thought that she, a waitress from Queens, now lived in a place where even the soap dispensers were made of gold. Adrian Hale stood across the room, buttoning his vest. He looked as flawless as he did on magazine covers, his expression carved in stone. You will have breakfast at 9, he said. My assistant will deliver your schedule for the week. We will attend 3 events together. Try not to speak to the press. Lila forced a nod. Yes, Mr. Hale. He looked up, his tone sharper. When we are in public, it is Adrian. You are Mrs. Hale now. Try to remember that. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they reminded her how unreal this marriage was, nothing but a script to play. He left soon after the elevator doors closing with a hollow chime. The silence that followed was heavier than the rain. Lila walked through the penthouse, running her fingers over the cold marble counters. Every corner whispered wealth, yet nothing felt alive. On the kitchen table lay the contract she had signed, the ink still dark. She whispered to herself, 7 days, Mom. Just 7 days. The next morning, the housekeeper, an older woman named Clara, brought her a breakfast tray. Lila tried to help, but Clara smiled kindly. No need, dear. Mr. Hale's guests do not lift a finger in this house. I am not a guest, Lila said softly. I am just temporary. That night, she attended the first charity dinner by Adrian's side. The chandelier above them glittered like frozen rain. As they walked in, cameras flashed and questions flew. Mr. Hale, is it true you married in secret? Miss Brooks? Sorry, Mrs. Hale. How did you two meet? Lila froze, her pulse quickening. Adrian leaned closer, his voice calm and low enough for only her to hear. Smile. Remember you chose this. She did as he said, her lips forming a perfect smile that did not reach her eyes. They took their seats at the long table surrounded by politicians and investors. Lila tried to focus on her plate, but whispers rippled around her. Who is she? Someone murmured. She looks so ordinary. When the host announced a toast, Lila accidentally knocked over her glass. Red wine spilled across Adrian's sleeve. Gasps followed. Her face went pale. I am so sorry. But before she could reach for a napkin, Adrian removed his jacket and handed it to a waiter. His tone was steady. It is fine. Accidents happen. The table fell silent. Then someone laughed awkwardly and the chatter resumed. Lila's hands trembled under the tablecloth. When she dared to look up, Adrian was already watching her, not with anger, but with something unreadable, something almost human. Later that night, as they returned to the penthouse, Lila thanked him quietly. You could have humiliated me in front of everyone. Adrian loosened his tie. That would have been a waste of time. Besides, he paused. You handled it better than I expected. Her lips curved into a small smile. You expected me to cry. I expected you to break, he said simply. For a moment, neither spoke. The city lights reflected in the glass behind them, painting their shadows together against the window. Adrian finally turned away. You should rest. Tomorrow will be worse. When he left, Lila touched her wedding ring, the one she had been told to wear for appearances. It gleamed in the dim light, too heavy for something so small. She lay awake for hours, listening to the sound of rain against the glass. Somewhere in that storm of loneliness and duty, a strange thought crept in, maybe. Just maybe the ruthless man she married was not made of stone after all. The third morning arrived with sunlight breaking through the gray clouds. For the first time since the wedding, Lila saw New York bathed in gold instead of rain. The warmth was deceptive, though inside the Hale penthouse, the air still carried the chill of formality. She sat at the long dining table, a bowl of untouched oatmeal in front of her. Across from her, Adrian read through a stack of documents. Every now and then, the soft sound of paper turning was the only thing filling the silence. After several minutes, she spoke carefully. You do not have to arrange my schedule like I am one of your employees. I can stay out of the way. Adrian did not look up. You are not an employee. You are a contract partner. That means you follow the plan, not improvise it. Her chest tightened. She took a sip of orange juice just to avoid speaking again. He glanced at her, studying her quiet defiance. You have an event tonight, a small business reception. Do not speak unless someone asks you a direct question. It will be over quickly. That evening, Lila wore the black dress his assistant had chosen for her. It fit perfectly, but felt nothing like her. As the car drove through the city, she looked out at the people hurrying along the sidewalks, each with a life that belonged entirely to them. She had traded hers for a signature. The reception was held at a rooftop lounge overlooking the skyline. Music played softly, laughter floated through the air, and everything shimmered with polished charm. Adrian guided her with a steady hand on her back. Cameras followed every move. When a woman approached, tall, elegant, and smiling too sharply, Lila recognized her from a magazine. Adrian, darling, the woman said. You have not called since the board meeting, and this must be your wife. Her tone made the words sound like an insult. Claire, Adrian replied evenly. Good to see you. Claire extended her hand to Lila. I suppose congratulations are in order. You came out of nowhere, dear. Lila forced a polite smile. Sometimes nowhere is where the best surprises begin. The woman's eyebrows arched, but Adrian's lips twitched almost like he was holding back a smile. When Claire finally walked away, he leaned closer, quick thinking. She whispered, "That was called survival." The rest of the evening blurred into polite conversations and flashing lights. Near midnight, as they stepped into the elevator, Adrian pressed the button for the penthouse, his face unreadable. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said quietly. "Better than expected. I have spent years serving people who did not bother to look at me." She answered, "Pretending is the one skill I mastered." For a heartbeat, their eyes met. Something about her honesty seemed to disarm him. The elevator reached the top floor, but neither moved. Then he cleared his throat. "Good night, Mrs. Hale. Good night, Adrian." The doors closed between them. The next morning, Lila found Clara folding linens in the guest room. "He always works like that?" she asked softly. The housekeeper nodded. "Mr. Hale never stops. Even his sleep looks like a meeting he is trying to control." Lila smiled faintly at the thought. Later that afternoon, she wandered through the study and stopped by a grand piano in the corner. A thin layer of dust covered its keys. She pressed one finger down and the single note echoed gently through the vast room. Adrian appeared in the doorway. "You play?" She startled. "A little. My dad taught me before he passed." He stepped closer. "This belonged to my mother. She used to fill this room with music. After she died, I could not stand the sound anymore." There was something raw in his voice, something that did not match his perfect suit or the walls of wealth around them. Lila looked at him and said softly, "Maybe silence hurts more than the memory." For the first time, Adrian did not have an answer. He stood still, the city's light spilling across the floor between them. The distance that had felt like an ocean now seemed only a few steps wide. When she turned back to the piano, her reflection shimmered next to his in the glossy lid, and for a brief, fragile moment, it looked like they belonged to the same world. The following days passed like a strange dream. The rhythm of the penthouse began to change just slightly. The silence was no longer sharp, but steady, almost calm. Lila found herself memorizing the way sunlight moved across the glass walls, how Adrian's shadow followed it as he paced during phone calls. She did not mean to watch him, but she did. One morning, she found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, pouring coffee. It was the first time she had seen him do something so ordinary. He looked up, almost startled by her presence. "The staff is off today," he said. "I did not want to wake you." "You make coffee?" she asked, half teasing, half amazed. A faint smirk crossed his face. "Contrary to rumors, I am not completely useless without an assistant," she smiled, taking the cup he offered. It was too strong, but she drank it anyway. For a moment they stood there like two people in a life that might have been real. That evening, they had another event. This time it was smaller, a private art auction at a downtown gallery. Adrian explained that his company sponsored one of the pieces. Lila wore a pale blue dress that shimmered under the lights. As they entered, whispers followed them again, but she was calmer now. She had learned how to breathe through the noise. Midway through the night, a painting caught her attention. It showed a young boy standing in the rain holding an umbrella too big for him. The caption read, "Shelter." "It is beautiful," she whispered. Adrian looked at the canvas for a long time. "My father used to say that money was the only shelter that lasts." He was wrong. She turned toward him. Then, "What lasts?" He hesitated. "Maybe kindness, maybe something we do not learn soon enough." Before she could answer, someone approached a board member, silver-haired and smiling too widely. "Adrian," the man said, "your wife has become quite the sensation. The media loves a mystery." Adrian's tone was polite, but clipped. "We are not here for publicity." The man chuckled. "Still, this arrangement of yours, it is temporary, yes." Lila froze. Adrian's jaw tightened. "It is none of your concern." When the man left, Lila looked down embarrassed. "He is right, though. It is temporary." Adrian's voice was quiet, controlled. "Do not let people like that define what this is. They feed on perception. We survive by silence." Later that night, the car ride home was quiet except for the city's hum. Rain began again, tapping against the windows. Lila turned her head, watching the reflections blur. "You live in silence, Adrian," she said softly. "Even when you talk, it feels like there is a wall between you and everything else." He did not answer at first. Then he said, Walls are reliable. People are not. Maybe you just met the wrong people, she whispered. He looked at her, and something in his eyes shifted like he wanted to believe her, but did not know how. Back at the penthouse, she slipped off her heels and sat on the couch. Her feet ached, her heart too. Adrian poured 2 glasses of wine and handed her one. To surviving the week, he said. She lifted her glass. And to pretending well. They clinked glasses, and for the first time they both laughed. The sound was soft but real. It lingered in the air longer than either expected. Later, as she passed the study, she heard faint music, the piano. She stopped at the doorway. Adrian was sitting there, his hands hesitant on the keys, playing the same song she had touched days ago. It was clumsy but tender. When he noticed her, he did not stop. "It is strange," he said quietly. "I thought I had forgotten how." "You did not," she replied. "You just needed a reason to remember." He smiled, a small, tired smile. Maybe you are that reason." Lila's breath caught. The moment felt too fragile to speak into, so she simply walked to the piano and sat beside him, letting the notes fill the empty spaces that words could not reach. Outside, the rain fell softly like applause meant only for them. By the 5th day, something between them had shifted in ways neither could name. The contract still existed, but it no longer felt like the only thing holding their world together. Lila woke to the soft hum of rain and the faint aroma of coffee drifting through the penthouse. Adrian was already dressed, standing by the window, phone in hands, speaking in that firm, controlled voice that belonged to the man the world feared. When he noticed her, his tone softened almost instantly. "Good morning. You have the charity gala tonight. It is the last public event before everything ends." She nodded, the reminder weighing heavier than she expected. 7 days, she said quietly. "It feels longer." He looked at her then, as if he wanted to say something more, but the words stayed locked behind his eyes. "Get some rest before tonight," he said instead. That evening, the hotel ballroom glittered under chandeliers. This gala was larger, louder, and brighter than any before. Lila wore a silver gown that shimmered with every step she took. When she entered the hall on Adrian's arm, conversations paused for a brief second. They looked like a couple carved from elegance itself. For hours, Lila smiled through speeches and polite laughter, but during one intermission, she caught Adrian watching her from across the room, not with ownership, but with quiet awe. When their eyes met, he looked away first, his jaw tight as if he was afraid of being seen feeling anything at all. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mrs. Haley," someone said sharply. She turned to see a younger executive, glass in hand, smirking. "You must be very proud of yourself. Some people climb ladders. You just married one." Lila froze. The sting of humiliation burned through her. Before she could speak, Adrian appeared beside her, his presence like a wall. His voice was calm but edged with warning. "You will apologize." The man laughed awkwardly. "I meant no offense." "Then do not speak like it," Adrian said, his tone dropping lower. The crowd nearby turned silent, sensing the tension. "Apologize and walk away." The executive mumbled an apology and disappeared into the crowd. Lila's heart pounded. "You did not have to do that," she said softly when the noise returned. "Yes, I did," he replied. "You deserve respect, even in a lie that does not change." Something in his words cracked the armor she had been wearing. They finished the night in relative silence, their closeness heavy with things unsaid. On the drive back, rain painted silver lines across the car windows. Lila leaned her head against the glass. "Do you ever wish this marriage was real?" she asked, almost to herself. Adrian hesitated. Sometimes, he admitted, but real things tend to break easier. "Not everything breaks," she whispered. He glanced at her, then his expression unreadable. "You are a strange woman, Lila Brooks, and you are not as ruthless as you pretend to be," she said with a faint smile. When they reached the penthouse, Adrian opened the door for her and followed quietly inside. The city lights outside shimmered like 1,000 secrets. She walked to the piano, tracing a finger along the edge of the keys. "Do you know," she said softly, "for a man who claims he does not believe in emotions, you spend a lot of time proving yourself wrong." He laughed under his breath, a sound that was rare and low. "You are making me sentimental. Maybe that is not such a bad thing." For a moment they stood facing each other. The distance between them felt impossibly small. His hand lifted as if to touch her, but he stopped halfway, fingers hovering near her cheek. She did not move away. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice trembling. The sound of his name on her lips broke the silence. He stepped closer, their eyes locked. For a second time seemed to suspend around them the storm outside the ticking clock, the world beyond those walls, all fading into nothing. But just before his hand touched her, the phone on his desk rang sharp and urgent. He drew back instantly, the air breaking between them. "I need to take this," he said, his tone back to steel. Lila swallowed hard and nodded. "Of course." When he walked into his office, closing the door behind him, she turned back to the window. Outside, lightning cut across the sky, and for the first time she felt that the 7 days might not end the way either of them had expected. She pressed her palm to the glass, whispering to herself, "If this is all just a lie, why does it feel so real?" And in the quiet that followed, the only answer was the sound of thunder rolling above the city that had never slept. The next morning began with a silence so heavy that it felt alive. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean, but the air inside the penthouse was colder than ever. Lila sat at the dining table staring at the half-empty cup of coffee that Clara had placed before her. Adrian had left before dawn, no note, no message, just the echo of his footsteps and the faint memory of almost touching her hand the night before. She told herself it did not matter. It was better this way. They both knew the marriage had an expiration date written clearly in the ink of a contract, but logic could not silence the ache that had started to grow inside her. Every small act of kindness he had shown, the coffee, the music, the quiet defense at the gala played in her mind like pieces of a puzzle she could not complete. By late afternoon, Adrian returned. His expression was tight, his phone still pressed to his ear. He spoke in a clipped tone, the kind that made everyone else shrink away. "No," I said, "move the funds quietly. The board cannot find out before the audit." Then he paused, noticing Lila in the hallway. For a moment his face softened. "I will call you back." She hesitated. "I did not mean to overhear." "It is fine," he said, loosening his tie. "You will hear worse if you stay here long enough. I thought honesty was supposed to be part of our agreement," she said quietly. Adrian let out a breath. "Honesty is a luxury, Lila. Not everyone can afford it." That night she could not sleep. She walked into the study and found him there, sitting by the piano again. His sleeves rolled up, a glass of whiskey beside him. He looked exhausted, the mask of control beginning to crack. "Rough day?" she asked softly. He smiled without humor. "You could say that. My father left more than an empire. He left debts, lies, and a name I am still trying to protect. Every deal I make is a bandage on something he broke years ago." Lila leaned against the doorway, her voice barely above a whisper. "You do not have to fix what you did not destroy." "I do not have a choice," he said. "If the truth comes out, everything my family built collapses, and the board will eat me alive. Is that why you needed a wife?" His eyes lifted to meet hers. "Partly. Investors like stability. Marriage makes a man look trustworthy." He paused, studying her face. "But you already knew that when you signed." She swallowed hard. "I did, but I did not know I would start to care." The room went still. For the first time, Adrian looked truly startled. He set his glass down slowly. "Lila?" She shook her head quickly. "Forget it. I should not have said that." He stood and crossed the room in 2 quiet steps. "No, you should have." His voice was low, unsteady. "Because He stopped himself, searching for the right words. "You have a way of making me forget that all of this is fake." Her heart pounded in her chest. "Then stop pretending." Adrian looked at her for a long moment, every wall he had built trembling. Then, just as he took a step closer, his phone buzzed again. He checked the screen, his expression darkening. "What is it?" she asked. He turned away. "The audit was leaked. Someone from the board found out about the offshore accounts. They think I've been covering for my father's fraud." Lila's voice trembled. "Can you fix it, maybe? But it will take everything I have left." "Let me help," she said quickly. He looked back at her, a small, pained smile on his lips. "You already have, more than you know." The phone rang again. He answered it, pacing toward the window. "Yes, I understand. No, we will not let this go public." Lila stood silently, watching his reflection in the glass. The powerful man everyone admired, the broken man only she had seen. When he finally hung up, she whispered, "What happens now?" Adrian turned to her, his voice calm but cold again. "Now I clean up the mess. And you, Mrs. Hale, stay out of it." She stared at him, her throat tight. "That is not fair. Neither is life," he said, picking up his jacket. "Go to bed, Lila. Tomorrow might be the end of everything." As he left the room, the echo of the door closing sounded like a verdict. Lila walked to the piano and pressed one key. The note trembled, fading into silence. Her eyes stung, but she refused to cry. Outside, lightning flickered again over the city skyline. Inside, she whispered into the empty air, "You can push me away, Adrian, but I'm not walking out until I know who you really are." And somewhere in the darkness of his office, Adrian Hale sat alone, staring at the rain, wondering when pretending had turned into something painfully, impossibly real. The sixth night arrived heavy with tension. The city outside glittered with distant life, but inside at the penthouse everything felt still, like the pause before a storm. Adrian had been gone since morning, and when Lila finally heard the elevator doors open-close to midnight, she almost felt relief. That feeling disappeared the moment she saw his face. He looked like a man who had been fighting ghosts all day. His tie was gone, his hair disheveled, and his eye carried the weight of something she could not yet name. "What happened?" she asked quietly. He walked past her without answering, setting his phone on the counter with a sharp sound. "It is over," he said flatly. "The press has the documents. By tomorrow the whole city will know that the Hale empire was built on debt and deceit." Lila froze. "You mean your father lied to everyone?" Adrian finished, his voice cracking for the first time. "And now I will pay for it. Every headline will call me what he was, a fraud, a coward." She stepped closer. "Adrian, listen to me. You are not your father. You have tried to fix what he broke." He laughed bitterly. "No one will care. They will tear me apart before I can explain. The board already voted me out. I have lost everything." Lila shook her head. "Not everything." He turned toward her, eyes fierce. "Do not say that. You do not understand what it means to lose a name like mine." "I do," she said softly. "Maybe not your name, but I have lost almost everything too. And I am still standing." Something inside him seemed to crack. He whispered, "Why are you still here? You got what you came for. The money, your mother's treatment. You should walk away." She met his gaze without fear. "Because I do not walk away from people who need me." For a long moment neither spoke. The rain began again, soft but steady, tapping against the windows like a clock counting down. Finally Adrian said, "The marriage was supposed to end tomorrow." "I know." "Then let it end tonight, before the world burns down around me." Lila felt her throat tighten. "If that is what you want." He did not answer. He just turned toward the window shoulders, tense, staring at the city that no longer belonged to him. Lila reached for the ring on her finger, sliding it off slowly. It glimmered faintly in the low light. She placed it on the piano next to the glass he had left there the night before. 7 days, she whispered. "You were right, it was never real." Adrian turned, pain flashing in his eyes. Lila, but she was already walking toward the door, every step heavy, every breath breaking a little more. When the elevator doors closed behind her, the sound echoed through the empty penthouse. Adrian stood there, staring at the ring she had left behind. For the first time in years, he felt powerless, not from loss of wealth, but from the absence of the one person who had seen him as something more than a name. Outside, thunder rolled over New York, and as the first headline hit the news screens across the city, Adrian Hale realized the truth he had spent years running from. He could rebuild his empire, but without her, it would mean nothing. The next morning, the city woke to headlines that painted Adrian Hale as a fallen king. Every television, every news feed carried his face, once the symbol of wealth and control, now the story of collapse and scandal. The Hale empire was under investigation. The board had removed him, and the mansion that had once been his fortress now felt like an empty shell. Lila saw it all from her small apartment in Queens. She had returned home in silence the night before, slipping back into the world she had left behind. Her mother was resting, unaware of the chaos playing out on the morning news. Lila turned off the television and sat by the window staring at the city skyline. The contract was over. The money had been paid. She should have felt free. But instead, There was only an ache, a hollow space shaped like his name. Across town, Adrian stood alone in his office, stripped of titles and assistants, watching boxes being carried out by security. Everything he had built was gone, but all he could think about was the sound of her voice when she said goodbye. For years, he had believed power could protect him from pain. Now he understood that pain was the one thing power could not buy away. That afternoon, a call came from the hospital. Adrian's foundation had quietly funded medical care for dozens of low-income patients, and the director was hosting a charity event that evening to honor the donors. It was the last public link to his name that had not been tainted by scandal. He almost ignored it until he saw her name on the list of guests. By the time he arrived, the rain had stopped. The hospital courtyard had been transformed into a small, outdoor gala. Warm lights strung across the trees. Lila stood near a table helping volunteers arrange thank you letters written by patients. She did not notice him at first. When she finally looked up, her breath caught. Adrian looked different, no suit, no entourage, just a man who had lost everything, but still stood tall. He approached slowly. "I did not expect to see you here," she said softly. "I should be the one saying that," he replied. "This foundation was supposed to be my redemption. Now it is the only part of my life that still matters." Lila folded her hands, unsure what to say. "You did not have to come." "Yes, I did." His voice steadied. "Because I never said thank you. You could have walked away long before it all fell apart, but you stayed. You saw me when no one else did." Her eyes softened. "You think this changes what happened," he said. "It does not erase the lies or the mistakes, but I can try to make them mean something." He took a deep breath and looked toward the crowd. "I am selling what remains of the company. Every cent will go to rebuild this hospital and keep it running. My father built an empire on greed. I want to rebuild one on hope." Gasps rippled through the small crowd as the announcement spread. Cameras began to flash again, but this time Adrian did not hide. He turned back to her. "I once told you I did not believe in honesty. Maybe that was the biggest lie of all." Lila's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed calm. "You are not the man they say you are." He smiled faintly. "No, I am the man you made me want to be." For the first time, he looked at peace. The noise of the crowd faded, and for a single heartbeat, the world felt still again. When the event ended, Lila stood watching him speak with reporters, not to defend himself, but to own his truth. And in that moment, she knew the man who once hid behind contracts and control had finally found something real, something that did not need to be signed to exist. 1 year later, spring returned to New York. The city that had once watched Adrian Hale fall now seemed to have forgotten the scandal. The newspapers had moved on to new stories, new names. But in one quiet corner of Brooklyn, a small garden wedding was taking place, simple, warm, and private. There were no reporters, no security guards, no flashing cameras, only laughter, sunlight, and the faint scent of lilacs carried by the wind. Lila stood at the center of it all, her white dress fluttering softly around her knees. Her mother sat nearby, smiling through tears. Adrian stood across from her, dressed, not in a suit of power, but in a gray vest and rolled sleeves. He looked nothing like the man who once ruled from the top of Hale Tower. He looked human, whole, and free. As the minister spoke, Lila could not help remembering the first time she had worn a wedding dress. A contract, a camera, a crowd. She had smiled then because she had been told to. Now she smiled because her heart knew peace. When the vows began, Adrian's voice trembled slightly. "The first time I stood beside you, I promised nothing but rules and silence. Today I promise the opposite. No lies, no contracts, only the truth for as long as you will have me." Lila felt her eyes blur with tears. She took his hands and whispered, "The first time I married you because I had no choice. This time I do, and I choose you." The small group of guests applauded softly. Clara wiped her eyes, and even the minister smiled. When Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, the gold caught the afternoon light. Just like the city skyline beyond them, bright and perfect, but full of promise. After the ceremony, they walked hand in hand through the garden. The path was lined with white flowers and paper cranes made by children from the hospital foundation. Each carried a small handwritten wish, hope, healing, love. Adrian stopped by one of the benches, his thumb brushing over Lila's ring. "Do you ever think about that first wedding?" he asked. She laughed softly. "Sometimes. It feels like it happened to different people. He nodded. Maybe it did. Those two strangers needed to break before they could learn what love actually means. Lila leaned her head against his shoulder. Then let us never forget them, because without them we would not be here. The sun dipped lower, painting the city in amber light. Somewhere nearby, a street musician began to play the same melody that Adrian once tried to remember on the piano. The sound drifted through the air, like a memory finally set free. Adrian turned to her and said, "Home used to be a place. Now it is a person." Lila smiled. "And you finally found yours." He kissed her gently, and for the first time everything was quiet: the world, the city, their hearts. The story that began with a contract ended with a promise, one written not in ink, but in faith. As the evening breeze carried the laughter of their guests, the last line of their story unfolded like a whisper between them. The first wedding was a lie. The second one was forever.